California would like to lead the way on going to zero carbon emissions, carbon dioxide emissions, beyond obvious. So the goal is to make sure everybody drives an electric car, every trucker is driving an electric truck, even trains coming into the state will have to convert to electric. Electric boats, I guess, will be next, hybrid boats coming into ports, electrify everything. I like electricity. I happen to think electrification is going to happen eventually to a lot of things. The problem with this whole push is very simple. It isn't zero emissions. California is not achieving zero emissions. They're simply shifting emissions elsewhere. So drive an electric vehicle in California, somewhere in the world, to build the vehicle, to get the materials, somewhere between 20 tons and 40 tons of carbon dioxide would have been emitted in the same atmosphere, just not in California. So yes, the emissions, if you charge an EV in California, for example, when the sun is shining and you happen to be in the right part of the grid, you might have very low emissions of carbon dioxide when you refill that battery. However, to manufacture that battery, you would have caused emissions elsewhere, largely in China, often in Africa, to get the copper, to get the minerals, the aluminum, to make the battery in the first place. Similarly with a solar array that you charge the vehicle with. 90% of all solar modules are made in China. The reason they're made in China is that it's very energy intensive to make solar photovoltaic cells. So they burn coal to make solar modules. They make 90% of the world's solar modules. So when you charge your EV in California or operate your house at high noon in California, you're using a tool, a machine that in effect is solidified Chinese coal that has emitted carbon dioxide elsewhere on the planet. It's the same planet. It's the same atmosphere. So the zero emissions pursuits by California result in shifting emissions and energy use elsewhere. It also shifts incomes and jobs elsewhere. It shifts geopolitical risks elsewhere. But if we focus just on emissions, it is a complete fiction that it's zero emissions, because in the real world that we live in, there are emissions associated with everything that's done, because everything that's manufactured, not some things, everything that's manufactured involves using hydrocarbons, burning them to make it. Everything, not some things, everything. So the practical question is, one has to use a caveat. Do you mean that an engineer could do something, no matter what the cost, damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead, as they say back in the old World War II movies, and just see what happens? Practicality usually means, can I do it at a price people can tolerate, that markets can afford, and that supply chains can support? So the answer is no, it's not practical. Can it be done? Yeah, you can build lots of electric cars. You can build lots of wind turbines. They can be built up to a point, and they get more and more expensive as time goes by. Not less cheap, but more expensive, because as more of them are built, you're competing for the same materials to build them. They all take lots of copper, lots of steel, particular copper. And the world's not going to produce enough copper if everybody tries to emulate California. California has the most expensive electricity in the country. It'll become more expensive. That will cause a deindustrialization of California. Some people might like that. The jobs go away. The spillover effect from manufacturing jobs go away. Germany's in the middle of deindustrialization, which they could stop. And their deindustrialization is not just a result of the challenge of dealing with Russian gas, but with the fact that their energy policies, instead of having low-cost energy, Germany has increased its energy costs by 300% in the last decade. And this has resulted in manufacturing erosion and now a flight of manufacturing out of Germany. Okay, those things will still get built. They'll get built in India and Pakistan and Vietnam, China, different parts of the world. And they will be burning coal and oil and natural gas in those countries. In particular, they'll be burning coal because the world's construction of coal-fired power plants is accelerating, not decelerating, everywhere except in Europe and the United States. There's a charming naivete to many people about what engineers can do. I think it's really quite remarkable. As a physicist who worked as an engineer, I'm really delighted that so many people feel so confident that engineers can just do anything. Just give them a task and they'll give you electric charging for cars wherever you need it. Well, sure, you can build electric chargers. It's not new physics. It's not new engineering. It's very straightforward how you have to build chargers. Here's the problem. Whether you charge the vehicle at home in a garage, and in America, I don't know the data for California exactly. It's probably similar. In America, about 1/3 of homes have a garage. Doesn't mean, I'm not talking about a shared big parking lot. I mean a garage. The vast majority of electric vehicles thus far, 90%, are purchased as a second or third car by wealthy homes that have a garage. So they charge the car overnight in the garage, which is perfectly fine. Now, if lots of houses do that in a neighborhood, it'll have a consequence because the power level of the charger, not the energy going into the battery. This is an important distinction. Power and energy are different. So I hate to do a little physics 101, but the engine in your car that might have, say, 100 horsepower doesn't take you anywhere to put fuel in the tank. So you have to spend money to build the engine that has power, and then you put fuel in it. Electric chargers are the same way. They require a physical infrastructure to handle the power, the charger. Then you need electricity produced somewhere to flow through the power machine, the charger. The faster you want to charge things, the more power you need. It's just locked into the electrical engineering of these systems. So overnight slow charging is much cheaper, takes longer, hours. The problem is the power demand, again, not the energy, for a single home charger is roughly double the power demand of the entire home. So that has an implication in the electric utility world. It means if every home in a neighborhood, a wealthy neighborhood, is charging their car overnight, they've just doubled the entire power demand of that neighborhood. The local distribution grid, transformers, can't handle that. So just spend money and buy transformers. You can do that. But the transformers are bigger because you might be shocked to learn higher power transformers not only cost more, they're bigger. Bigger means heavier, which cascades into the poles themselves, probably can't handle the physical weight. So you'll have to replace the transformers, which are 3 times more expensive now than they were 10 years ago. A long wait time, shortage of transformers. A lot of that manufacturing has moved to China. And you have to replace the poles in many neighborhoods because the poles can't handle the heavier transformers. That's just for at-home charging. The cost to do that is tens to hundreds of billions of dollars, depending how ambitious you are, none of which is being included in the so-called costing of the Inflation Reduction Act, the Green New Deal. Then imagine you might actually want to charge your car on the road. What a shocking idea. Okay, to do that in under hours, in say 20 to 30 minutes, requires even more power. Those power chargers cost 200 to 300% more per port than a gasoline pump costs per tank. So you replace a hose with a nozzle with a charging port. So you're going to triple the cost of the charging station or the fueling station. And its power requirements are not just twice that of a house. They're 50 times more than a house. 50. One charging port is like 50 houses of power demand. So you put 20 or 30 of those at a single fueling station, and that single fueling station has a power requirement equal to a stadium for a football game. You need thousands of fueling stations. So we are putting on the grid in California. We'll need thousands of charging points if everybody goes to EVs. We will need to build a physical infrastructure to handle the power, talking about the energy, equal to thousands and thousands of stadiums. Not one in San Francisco and one in LA and one in Bakersfield, but thousands. No one is costing that out. That's hundreds of billions of dollars of physical infrastructure to handle the power. Could you build it? Sure, it's just money. Is there enough copper? These are all copper-intensive pieces of infrastructure, the wires, the transformers. Well, if just California did it, the world would have enough copper. But if everybody else wants to emulate the brilliant move on California's part, there's not enough copper being mined in the world. Here's the truth of charging an EV. Everyone knows that you'd like to have it charged when we're not burning hydrocarbons, particularly in California, natural gas, or importing coal-fired electrons off the grid that you're on, in which you're sharing electricity, back and forth with the rest of the Western grid. So in the real world, the grid that we're going to have for the next 5 or 10 years is pretty predictable. It takes time to build things. You can build more windmills and solar arrays, but we're going to have lots of hydrocarbons still energizing the grid, even in California, for a long time. So how do I ensure that you're actually charging your vehicle only with wind and solar. Well, it's an easy solution. Won't let you charge your vehicle. I will put a GPS locator on your car, keep track when and where you charge it, and you won't be allowed to charge it when you're going to entail using hydrocarbons, burning oil, gas, or coal somewhere else. That might be a little inconvenient, but it'd be one solution. I think consumers won't like that, but there's a lot of serious environmentalists who are proposing that we provide either inducements, that means charge you a lot more, make you pay a lot more for charging when I don't want you to charge, and give you a discount charging when I want you to charge. Okay, this is social engineering. I just think we need to be honest about the fact that we're going to be engaging in a lot of social engineering to change people's, quote, behaviors. A lot of these plans involve behavioral changes because electric vehicles are just not as convenient. They just aren't. You can fuel a gasoline tank in 4 to 5 minutes, anytime, anywhere. Can't do that with an EV. The idea that EVs are simpler, better vehicles is just not true in the engineering. It's just they're different and better in some ways, not as good in other ways. But to fuel them conveniently, they're worse by a lot compared to a gasoline car. So we have to engage in social engineering to get people to do what environmentalists, if you like, objectives would want to have happen. I don't think most people will be really happy about being socially engineered, but some people might be. But by and large, this is the guess. This is not physics. This is not engineering. But my experience in life would suggest the more you try to social engineer people's behaviors, the less happy people are. Convenience is a metric that's extremely important to people for a very simple reason. It involves the most precious commodity in the universe, my time, your time. And convenience is a synonym for reducing the amount of time of mine that you waste by imposing on me something, setting aside if it costs the same. So even if it costs the same, but I'm telling you when you can do it and when you can't, I change an incredibly important metric in free societies. Now, statist societies can tell you exactly what to do when they want you to do it. I just think a lot of the proposals that surround electric vehicles are statist.
If you haven't checked out CaliforniaInsider.com, we highly recommend you do that now because we're going to have a lot of news and videos there. And on top of what we have there right now, we are building a really big platform to cover what's happening in California so you can be informed. We're going to have more shows, more videos from all aspects of life in California. Go to CaliforniaInsider.com and we'll see you there.